Hey y'all, hey. My name is Sharad, but you may know me better as Deep Black. I'm so excited to bring y'all something completely new. This is a new video series channel called Dive, and it's all about design. So for our first episode, I thought it would be fun to take you on a little history through the evolution of Deep Black. We're gonna look at some forms that you know and love, and I'm gonna show you where they came from and where they're going. So, first up, plates. Simple, easy. One of the hardest forms to make in ceramics. It's really hard to get a bone straight, bone flat plate. Here are some of the earliest ones. So this is a side plate. Here's another one, very, very similar. This one I think is a porcelain, actually. This one is a stoneware, nice and small. You can see the rim on this. This is what it actually ended up being. This is the side plate you can buy on the site. This is the one I made quite some time ago. Very similar in size, you can see. Dinner plates. This is the dinner plate I did for a little company called Dot Meredith. They do all the food photography for like Real Simple, Martha Stewart Living, Southern something, Food and Home, I don't remember. They do a lot of the food photography, you know. So anyways, they commissioned me to make some dinner plates in a very particular shape. They wanted a square corner and a square rim. This was the first time, this was the sort of a prototype for the plates I ended up designing. I didn't like how short the rim was on these. They very specifically wanted these real short. But you see this glaze, this chartreuse, this is where the glaze, now called Oasis, started. They could very specifically commission a chartreuse color for me. This is what the dinner plate ended up being. Nice and big, quite a bit larger than the ones that I prototyped, or I guess were commissioned for. And you can see that it's got a little bit of a higher rim to it. That was intentional. Like I said, I wanted something a little bit taller, but not much. There's really not that much difference between them. All right, on to something that I call my specialty, bowls. Here's a snack bowl that many of you know and love. So this wasn't the very first thing called a snack bowl I made. This was the first one that I molded. And this one I used for Madewell collaboration. It was offered on the site by itself for a little while, I think. And this is the size and shape of the bowl for Bayberry Garden, a restaurant in Rhode Island. So this is the snack bowl of today. When I first made this one, I really loved how small it was, but when I wanted to make the permanent one, I wanted it to be a little bit taller. So you can see it's almost exactly a quarter of an inch taller, and I believe it's the same, almost the same diameter, pretty close. The dinner bowl. I offered only for a very short period of time. This is the original dinner bowl that became what it is today. This was holiday drop 2021, I want to say. Yeah, it's nice and simple. It has a beautifully curved bottom. That is kind of the jumping off point for a lot of the design decisions I made going forward. I really love that curvature. I think it's really beautiful. This is the one that you can buy on the site here in Chef's White. And as you can see, it retains that same curve at the bottom. In fact, the dinner bowl is one of the first forms that I molded. It retains the same curve, but it's quite a bit bigger and a little bit shorter, as you can see. It, in fact, fits inside. So it's about, I don't know, a ½ inch bigger, which I kind of think makes all the difference. This is a little small to my eye. That's one of the trickiest parts, is finding the right size. There's no one correct answer. So you kind of got to go with your gut, but I really like this size for this bowl. All right, now we're really going to get into some stuff. So, prototyping. I'm a big fan of prototyping. To prototype just means to create a sort of non-final version of something that you're trying to achieve. You're sort of working up to it, trying to play with parameters and dimensions and color, things like that to find the very best of the form that you can. The Pasta Bowl, released February of 2023 for the Reprise. I prototyped the hell out of it. The shape, not so much, funny enough. I knew what I wanted it to look like, that shallow bowl shape. I don't know what I'm talking about, I've got it right here. But what was really in question was the glaze. I wanted to make a different kind of glaze, an ombre, but one that was much more subtle, very soft and romantic. So what I did was a lot of color tests of different applications, different concentrations, saturations, different forms. I really wanted to see how I could apply this ombre. But it was really fun to play around with different colors and tones, shades, tints. I'm throwing out words here. But this one I did not end up using, but in its current form, but I really, really liked it. So of course, what this ended up being is this, the pasta bowl. So this is in fact the very first one I made. It's the one in fact that it's used in photos. You can see the glaze is not evenly dispersed through it. It took some time before I could figure that out. The color, I should say, rather. The color is not evenly dispersed, the pigment, through the glaze here. It's also really thin. I mean, wafer thin. You can even see in the rim, it's really thin, which isn't a problem per se, but over time, I learned to make it much more durable. So what you get today is this one. Same form, you can even see the rim, much thicker, much better glaze application. Funny enough, Meredith, the same company, Meredith, they asked for some of these pasta bowls this year, and rather last year, 2023. And they wanted a few different things. They wanted a band of white, and they also wanted a much more saturated look to it. So sort of going back to some of the original experiments. See? Now, of course, couldn't stop there. I've done a few experiments with the pasta bowl since. I really wanted to see what else I could do to it. It's full of cat hair. Full of cat hair. If you are following me on Instagram, and I sure hope you are, you will have seen this version. This one is the same form, but run quite a bit thicker. This is 10 millimeters and incised with a ridge. If you want, I'd be happy to show you guys how I did this later on. It's not as complicated as you might think. A different kind of bowl, but a bowl no less. The stash jar. This was such a popular item. The most expensive thing that I have made, but really popular. So, oh, it's still got weed in it. Oh. The stash jar was designed for your buds and your blunts. It was originally made in holiday drop 2021, so December-ish. It took me a long time to prototype this. This is the original. This is in fact the very first one, and I kept it for myself. I was like, there's no way I'm selling this. It has, here's the lid, base, lid, and you see there's almost no play, which I love. You can also see it has a different knob. Funny enough, I kind of want to go back to this style. I had to make some concessions when I decided to mass produce, for lack of a better word, this form. So this is hand thrown. All the prototypes that I've shown you are hand thrown on the wheel. This is what you could buy last year, but it is jiggered. And so being jiggered, that means it's a technique that requires a mold and a profile. And so it produces very consistent, even forms, but it has quite a lot of limitations. And to my knowledge, almost no one has made lids on it. That was my goal for this form, was how can I make a lidded form on the jigger? So this stash jar is actually 3 parts originally. So it starts out as just this base, which is in fact the same base as the spoon rest. Then this lid is one form, and the knob itself, which functions like an ashtray, this one didn't have that functionality, is the third form. And then these two get joined together in a really particular process. And the idea is that this sits here. This is a second, so it's kind of janky. This is the only one I kept for myself. You can hear quite a lot of play. I wasn't really happy with how this turned out, which is why it's no longer available. But it was really fun to make like a really great challenge, and people really like this. So it's coming back at some point. Prototype and what was actually offered, and you can see there's a great size difference, the shape is different, the features are different, they're really not the same at all. But this is just so I can get the hang of the idea. So since I mentioned it, let's look at the spoon rest. This is the spoon rest that I made for Great Jones. This was such a fun collaboration, and it was in fact the very first time I had made a spoon rest. So when I wanted to offer one permanently, I made a few changes. First and foremost, I really widened the cutout. But you can see how much wider that cutout is. Furthermore, the cutout is, and the one that's offered now is farther up from the base. You see this one's almost flush with the base. This one has a little bit of a lip. I did that intentionally so that liquid could, drop down and not accidentally come back out. All right, let's look at a really good one now. The Ramekin baby. The Ramekin was always meant to replace the pinch bowl. I waited and waited and waited on this, and I wanted to wait until I had time to really prototype this out. So for those who don't know, a ramekin is just a small ceramic dish Used for in cooking. You can use it to store ingredients while you're cooking. You can use it for baking. Creme brulee is often made in ramekins. You may have seen the little fluted ones, you know. So I really wanted to nail it and have something that would be iconic and versatile and long-lasting. So this one I really spent some time prototyping out. This was one of the times, 2023, that I really wanted to Jesus, look at me making puns, dig into all the nuances of the form. So here's a few variations, right? This one is pretty close to what it ended up being. You can see a little bit of a difference here. I was trying to find, I knew I wanted to do this band with the lip underneath, and so I was trying to find, you know, what size I liked. Then I was playing around with height. You know, I don't really love that one. It's a little big. I started to dial it in, and then I started to play with the glazing style. So were we going to go over the rim or under? This is, funny enough, you would think this is the jiggered final form. It is not. It's almost identical to what it ended up being. So here's the one you can buy on the site. Here was the last prototype. And frankly, the only reason I know it's a prototype is because the walls are not perfectly straight and it has some of the trim rings. Otherwise, it's pretty identical to the final thing. And that was intentional, of course. Once I finish a prototype, I then use its measurements, its design, its style, to create the final form. That's the whole purpose of a prototype, right? Now, couldn't stop there. One of the things that I've been working on is how to take these forms that exist and are jiggered and molded and turn them into something new, you know, getting a little more bang for our buck here. So this was the first ashtray I ever made. I made it a couple years ago, and it was a slip cast form, one that in fact I never used for much. I used it for one drop and it was never seen again. But all I did was just cut out a couple holes, and I thought, okay, that's a cool ashtray. That sat on our table for a long time. Then it dawned on me, the Ramekin is the perfect size for an ashtray. So on Instagram, you will have seen this is what that ashtray ended up becoming. So we went from, you know, here to here with it. It just goes to show when you put thought into the design and really, really, really dig into the details of it, there's no end to what you can do with it. All right, let's talk about the Cappuccino Cup. Funny enough, the Cappuccino Cup started sort of absent-mindedly. I was throwing on the wheel, just playing around while doing throwing shit with Diana one night. You can find it on Instagram. I was just making stuff, wasn't really paying attention to it, and I ended up making this. I don't know, I wasn't really doing it with any sort of intention when I was making it, and I put it right on my kitchen counter. I keep spoons in it to this day. And then one day I was like, man, I would love to make something, some sort of drinkware, but I don't know where to start. And my eyes just landed on this one. I was like, oh my God, there it is. Let's give it a shot. So that's what I did. We went to prototyping phase, and what we ended up with were a couple variations. So you can see the relative size of them. And so this one had a little bit taller band, and then this one a little bit shorter. And I just wanted to play around with proportion and size. So here's the original. Here's the prototype. You see they're a little bit narrower. And then, of course, here's what we ended up with in Bisou as well. So prototype, final, right? Very similar. I made it a little bit wider, and the band, as you can see, is much taller. I don't know if you've actually noticed, but there is actually a pattern between the bands. The Ramekin and the wide Ramekin have a thinner band because they're glazed over. The Cappuccino Cup and Espresso Cup have a taller band. I think it's 1.5 inches of their exact same height band. And they're glazed under. Another experiment that I had done earlier in the year was around working with slip. I wanted to see what I could do with just straight up. Slip is liquid clay, or rather clay that's just not that solid. In this case, it was kind of in the middle between a liquid and a solid. And I just sort of dabbed it on the form, trying to give it texture and movement, a little bit of color play in there as well. And I did this, and it sat for quite some time. And then it dawned on me that that would be a fabulous accent on some of the pieces. And so, specifically, quartz, just clear. So what we have here is the first attempt at that. You can see this wasn't really bold enough. What we ended up with is more like this. Let me try and not spill water on myself. This has a much more pronounced band of texture on it. You can see where it came from, how it ended up. And I've carried that over onto some other forms too. which I'm really pleased about. One of the things that I did for Bayberry Garden was a custom set of pourers. You know when you're at like a really fancy restaurant and they come by, the waiter comes by with your dish, and then there's like a little pourer and they pour like a sauce or chocolate or whatever have you over top of whatever you're eating. That's what they wanted. A bunch of these. It's got the racing stripe that I used to do. Fabulous. This is one I kept for myself. I use it all the time, believe it or not. I wanted to see if I could recreate that with an existing form, and I thought the Cappuccino Cup was the perfect form to do it. Here it is. In fact, you're the very first to see this. So this is the exact similar almost the same spout on both of them. This one is just Cappuccino Cup, and this one is just a form that I threw. You can see that there's almost the same sort of size. This one's a little bit bigger, this one's a bit smaller, but it works beautifully. It looks great. More evolution. Here to here to here to here. So, the mug. I'm a little embarrassed to show this to y'all. This was the very first mug I ever made. God, okay, hear me out. My cousin, my aunt, and I were watching Power, and it was the last season. So I wanted something, I was just learning, clay, I was just learning to throw, just getting comfortable. So I wanted to do something, I don't know, to commemorate the fact that we were all watching it together. We would have watch parties and all that. So I decided to make these mugs, these gun mugs. They're not porcelain, but it's like a really white stoneware. And I didn't get in trouble, but it was the talk of the studio when I was making these bad boys. So, it's exactly what you think it is. This glaze is palladium. I don't know what's on the interior, some sort of satiny black. And I don't know what this is. It might be palladium as well. I'm not sure, but this is the very first mug I ever made, believe it or not. So from there, I started to branch out a little bit into the fin mug. Some of y'all may remember this one. I'm a little embarrassed to show this too, to be perfectly honest with you. But it worked decently well, pretty well. And I sold them all, but that was the second mug I ever made. So then I started getting a little more sane. This one I made, I don't remember when, it was never offered. I'd made it for myself. I use this one constantly. It's a really great size, and it kind of influenced the style of mug that I wanted to make. I don't like a big honkin' mug, I have to tell you. I'm not like a giant ass cup of coffee person. I like little bitty, teacups. I think it's just, I don't know, a little more romantic. I did make this one. This was a commission for someone, and so it's never released. But they wanted an ovoid porcelain mug. This one is glazed in sapphire, just on the interior. It's really nice. It fits really nicely in the hand. I don't really ever use it, but it's a nice mug. This is the one you'll probably remember. This one is the prototype for what became the mug for Ashtray Moderna. I sold quite a few of these actually, the holiday drop of 2021. That was kind of the genesis for a lot of stuff, now that I say it out loud. You can see the handle is a very classical shape. You can see the bowl is quite wide and low. This is kind of the mug shape I really, really like. It could be a bit narrower, but in fact, I think the real one, the one that ended up being final, was bigger. So then it went away. It went away for quite a while. I don't think I have any of the Ashtray Moderna jiggered mug, but that form went away for a while. And then I decided to revisit it. And when I did, if you have been following along stories, this is what we ended up with. These two versions. Funny enough, this has a similar handle to the mug that I was making, and then I decided to chop it off and try something different. So again, evolution. It's the Cappuccino Cup. That's all it is. And in fact, that's why it's called the Cappuccino Mug. It was inherited from that. And of course, what I ended up doing, something a little different. I glazed it fully over the rim, giving it this really nice pop modern appearance. The handle, in fact, the newer handle is a little bit different from this one. It's thicker, but it works very, very similarly. It's a really nice mug. This was the last mug that I've made. It was Renaissance. Let's get to it, okay, honey? It was Beyonce all day, every day. Was the inspiration for this? I'm that girl. The rim is palladium. The interior and exterior are onyx, just a matte black. And you can see it's got a few problems, right? This is why I haven't done this as like a real product. But I just want you to look at the first mug I made and the last one. Evolution, baby, evolution. In fact, the exact same glaze, palladium. So it's really a full circle kind of a product, which is very, very funny to think about. How no matter how far you evolve or grow or stray from your path, eventually you come back to what you like, right? That's our word for the day. That's it. A little history of Deep Black, some of my favorite forms. I hope this really inspired you to dig into your own work and find out how things have changed over time and where you might want to take them next. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, all those things, and drop me a comment about what you like the most and maybe what you'd like to see next. All right, y'all. Until next time, bye.